as long as I'm doing everything I possibly can to be a good person and to try my hardest to please them as well as helping us survive, then that's all I can do.
I'd say we all need a healthy dose of OCD, because what it does give you is the ability to break down focus, goal set, and plan so that you can balance lots of those different things and prioritise.
Never let anyone see your weakness.
Yeah.
Don't let anyone know your weakness, because that is an easy way to attack.
Young people live in this world of almost better to stay safe than ever take a risk,
Yeah.
or put themselves forward. Welcome back to Success is a System. I'm Mike Greene, and we're joined today by Sam Robinson. Sam is a business owner, a commercial property lawyer, a mum, a podcaster. As you can see, The Secret Life of Women in Business. We will put the link for that in the show notes, so look out for that and check out Sam's podcast. Welcome, Sam.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
No, it's a pleasure. So we first met on LinkedIn.
Yes.
And I think on LinkedIn, the power of it really is about bringing people who might be able to help each other, or might have common interests, or might want to use each other in business or employ, and so on. So I think it's a great tool. But one of the things I noticed about you was the energy and enthusiasm you had in all of your language and communications. And that's something that seems to have carried through in the few minutes we've been talking as well.
Yeah, I'm hugely passionate, and anyone who knows me knows I talk a lot about energies, and I'm a massive believer in giving off that energy, and I believe it's infectious.
Yeah.
And the energy you give off is the energy you receive. So, sometimes on the school run, people go, morning, I'm like, morning, how are you? Really good, thanks. It's just those little things. Because I think, to be honest with you, 50% if you, don't want to know about any problems, and the other 50% kind of get off on hearing about problems. So it's just giving off positivity and receiving positivity.
No, it's a really good point. And one of the sayings I remember one of my mentors saying is, misery loves company.
Yes.
So if you feed it, you suddenly have this pity party, and it's just like, it's not going anywhere. It's just neggy,
Yes.
And if it was a choice between a pity party or a positive party, I know where I want to be.
Exactly.
We're going to get into all of the things that you talk about, and we got your logo here. I want to talk about that podcast as well, as we sit here on my podcast. Because certainly women in business are really important to me, and women generally, because I was brought up by a single mother. She was told to put us into a home because she couldn't handle, it was 4 kids at the time, and look after herself, because we were all kind of really young. They didn't know her. She had the power. She carried on. She looked after us. She grew us into strong individuals. I had lots of sisters. I got 2 daughters. I got a strong wife. So to me, I'm very much celebrating that. But first, I want to go back. Tell us about Sam Robinson as a 6-year-old, a 16-year-old, and what were your motivations back then? Did you have visions of what you wanted to do, and what was life like for you?
Yeah, we spoke briefly before, and I said I've always been driven and motivated. It stems back to my dad, who is a huge inspiration to me, huge role model. He's always been really driven and motivated and really successful. So I went through school, did really well, got straight A's, and continued on the academic process. However, I used to work as a Saturday girl in a hairdresser's, and I absolutely loved it. I used to look forward to going, washing hair, sweeping the floors.
And what time was it? What age was this?
I started at 14.
Right.
Used to work 9 till 5 o'clock and get paid £15. And I loved it. And from that minute on, I wanted to own my own hairdressers. Right. So even then, I had the vision of being a business owner. And my surname used to be Booty, and I used to say, I'm going to have a hair salon called Hair and Booty. Right. It was always the dream. I had a really amazing law teacher who I actually see on the school run every day, who's taking his grandchildren to school. And he said to me, please just do your A-levels and your degree and get your academic side, and then look to see where you want to go. I went down that route and went into law and became a qualified solicitor.
And you didn't carry that on? Or you did carry that on?
I did, and I didn't.
How did you get into business?
Okay, so as I was working as a solicitor, we then, myself and my sister, set up a business in the background, which was called Tepee. It was a TP hire company, and we grew the business whilst I was still working as a solicitor. And I found myself really conflicted because I couldn't manage everything, and something had to give. And it was a huge leap of faith to decide to walk away from this career that I'd mapped out, since being since being quite young, and worked so hard for. I mean, the training to go into becoming a lawyer is it's long and intense. So yeah, I took the leap of faith and went into the family business and absolutely loved it. So Boo Tepee was a luxury teepee hire company, and we actually won 3 regional awards and went on to become the national #1 wedding marquee provider in the UK. It was an amazing business. We hosted over 300 events. We were a 5-star review company. We prided ourselves on our customer services. It was a brilliant company. And then COVID hit.
And so, no more events.
No more events. We wasn't classed as hospitality, so the funding was limited. It was a tricky time. But it does make you reassess. So, we looked at the business, and even though the take-ins were really high on Boo Tepee, when you looked at the profit margins, there was a lot of things we could improve on. There was huge staff costs, huge overheads. Our storage costs were huge.
And was it a very competitive business? Were a lot of people competing against you?
When we started, it wasn't too competitive. There was a main company, and then there was us, and then there was, we were quite scattered across the UK. We had kind of the luxury in our area. However, the last few years, TP companies were popping up left, right and centre. And we made a decision to, instead of cutting prices and matching theirs, we didn't want to drive the industry down. So we maintained, if anything, we put our prices up. And we said, do you know what? We've got the experience. We're the #1 in the UK. You're paying for us, and you're paying for that service and that level of expertise.
I mean, that's really important. One of the things to talk about with Joe Valenti, The Apprentice, he talks about much better to go premium and then be able to give a great service than go value and not have any fat to give a better service or to offer more and so on. And similarly, Charlie Mullins, who we're going to have on the podcast in a couple of weeks, he talks about the fact he was the most expensive in London, but they knew that he would turn up on time.
Yes.
The house would be left as clean, if not cleaner, than when they first came. They wouldn't bring any extra muck in. The people, everything about what they offered was premium.
Yes.
And they used to joke about John Lewis. Obviously, their strapline was never knowingly undersold. But actually, the joke was that they were reassuringly expensive. And although that sounds like, hang on a minute, that's not right, is it? But there is something about being reassuringly expensive. So you can know there's an element of service and trust and all the premium that goes with that.
And I think because we did do corporate events, but primarily it was weddings.
Yeah.
And, when you're talking about trust with someone, the biggest day of
people's... You can't redo it, can you?
Yeah. Yes, you've got to make sure you are performing and adhering to everything you've promised.
Yeah.
That trust relationship is just invaluable. So it was really important to us, and that's what we prided ourselves on. Our customer service, we had a 24-hour response policy. We emailed back in 24 hours. We really pride ourselves on that customer service.
Well, and I wrote a book called Failure Breeds Success. Jules and I, got a house, lost a house, delivered pizzas on mopeds for a couple of years, lost everything, rebuilt back, and along the way, even building back, we've had troughs and peaks, if you like, and I think that's the way it should be.
Yes.
So there's nothing wrong with when it goes wrong, but post-COVID, and you sold and you made a bit of money from it, but did you sell it because you fell out of love with it, or did the bottom fall out of that as a business? What happened?
So a bit of both really. So we did the numbers, and we could have got around it. It would have taken maybe a couple of years, I think, when we did the maths, and we could have got to that point. However, the love was lost, and I think when you lose the love, especially in a business that is customer facing, it's a hard one to get back. So my background as a commercial property lawyer was very transactional, but then I turned into a litigation lawyer. I was receiving legal letters, there was disputes on deposits, money paid, and that from a 5-star company receiving no complaints to then going to not pleasing people, and it was impossible to please people.
And it was the COVID laws at the time, not any failure of yours
exactly.
as to why you couldn't deliver.
Well, we said our terms and conditions were really tight. I'd had them done and checked over by a corporate lawyer in my company, and we did everything we could. And do you know what? We were flexible with the terms and conditions. We tried our hardest, but while surviving and keeping our head over water. So it was a really difficult time because we are people pleasers, and to not please people, and to not only not please people, but want people for them want to then go ahead and sue you, was a really, really, really
It's
tough
well,
time.
even though it wasn't your fault, you
Yes.
obviously, as an entrepreneur and a business person, take that on personally.
Massively.
And actually, I think it's a really important point for people that sometimes in business you do everything right and it goes wrong.
Yeah.
Because we do, as human beings, we tend to blame somebody. Now, that the worst thing is often we take that blame in on ourselves,
Yes.
and then that leads to mental health or stress or anxiety and all of that. Whilst we're trying to, you're a mum of 4 kids as well, so that's going on as well, and
Yeah.
you're busy with a partner. All of that's happening, and in effect, you can become really lonely in the bubble of your business, even though you're doing it with your sister and that. But
Yes.
it becomes this prison almost of problems,
It really was.
and you have to deal with that. How did you get through that? Because there will be people dealing with problems now.
Yeah. Do you know what? It was a really tough time. And if we go back to that time, I was all, like I say, I'm a mum of 4. I was homeschooling at the time as well because the kids weren't at school. Yeah. And so basically we'd put our out of office on our emails to say, we will be working between the hours of 7 p.m. and 11 p.m, 12 p.m. We were working as soon as those kids was in bed after doing a full day of homeschooling and all the stress that the children were dealing with at the time as well, to then switch on and then have to make those difficult phone calls was a really, really, it was really hard. And me and my sister had set roles in the business which worked really, really well. She's trained in maths. She got a first and a maths degree. She's really switched on with numbers. She did a lot of the account side of things. I did a lot of the legal side, terms, conditions, contracts. But I also am more familiar with the difficult conversations. So that tended to fall on me. And now, whilst we spoke together about it, I was the one that tended to pick up the phone. And I'm not going to lie, I quite often put that phone down and I cried. And it was, I think it's just resilience, isn't it? And I think it's, looking back now, it's all about character building and growth and enjoying the journey. And it all leads to a greater, bigger picture. But I think it's just surviving and living day to day and just doing. My mum always used to say to me, if you can sleep at night, you're doing something right. And I used to think, as long as I'm doing everything I possibly can to be a good person and to try my hardest to please them as well as helping us survive, then that's all I can do.
We always seem to go back to, and you're talking about being a mum and so on, but in business, I talk about my mum a lot. I didn't have a dad around that was a reasonable figure, but our mums and dads are those mentors, if you like. They give us those things. So similarly, my mum used to say there's no softer pillow than a clear conscience, i.e. if you can go to sleep at night knowing that you've done your best, knowing that you've not screwed anybody. So, even though stuff's going wrong and people are upset because it's their wedding anniversary or their wedding or it's their birthday or whatever, COVID brought that on. You were not allowed to deliver even if you wanted to deliver. So
exactly.
I think you do your best and then you have to be able to sleep at night because they're increasingly realising. I talked with Dom on the health and wellness podcast the other week about if you're not getting enough sleep, that will kill you quicker than many other things. And every time you wake up, you only wake up for a pee in the middle of the night, but suddenly your brain goes, boop, we're awake now, and it's all churning. How did you sleep with all that going on and your kids waking you up as well?
Do you know what? A lot of nights I didn't sleep, and I'm a huge, like you say, once you're awake, oh gosh, my brain goes into overtime. I quite often sleep with a pen and paper by my bed because I think, well, actually going back to a different subject, meditation and going into an alpha state, I think that when you're sleeping and I'm relaxed, my best ideas come. Sleep for me was difficult at the time. And I remember one day that I'd received a telephone call from a local newspaper who said they were running an article on a group of customers who had come together and said that we'd stolen X amount of money. And I was actually 6 weeks pregnant at the time. I just found out I was pregnant. And I got that call and I just burst. I couldn't actually control myself on the telephone call. Normally I'm quite front and I'll put on that front and I'll put that shell up and I'll put on that act. But oh gosh, that took me by surprise. And I just said to them, I said on the phone, I said, look, my history is as a trained lawyer. I said, we've done everything we can, and we've done everything by the book. If you run this and go to print, you need to be really, really sure that you're telling everyone that we've done everything within our terms and conditions. We've not breached any contracts. We've done everything right and correct. We had this conversation. I sent over all our contracts, terms and conditions, and she rang me back within an hour and said, look, spoken to the manager, we're not going to print. However, all in my head, all I was thinking was, seeing on, on Facebook when you see all the comments on the articles, and I was just thinking, Beverley and where I live, it's such a small place, and reputation to me is massive. I don't want to be seen as what they were trying to portray.
Yeah.
So that night I didn't sleep well, even though I knew the article wasn't going to print. It was a really challenging time.
And I know when I did a bit of a foray into politics, which we won't get into, but I do love politics. It's everything that we do about life. But there were journalists, and The Guardian were the worst, but several papers just outright lied. But they can get away with it because they say allegedly, or a source has said, and then you've got to either fight it, would cost a lot of money, takes you off your game and everything else. But I really wish sometimes that the press could understand, and we're seeing it with Prince Harry at the moment going through, they could understand it's easy for them to be parasitic and write a story that is sensational, negatively or positively. But if they could only follow through the impact it has on people's lives, how it affects people, it's not just a thing, it's people. And it affects their kids, and it affects their relationships, and it affects everything. It literally can destroy people. Journalists need to have their eyes open to that and need to be made more and more responsible for their actions, I think.
I agree, because at the time it was a family-run business, and it was myself and my sister, and then our partners' husbands became involved. So my husband actually went back to the building site and the building trade, and I said, do you know what? We're doing everything in our power. Do you know, it's uprooted our life. Do you know, we've gone from a really successful business to struggling. And I think they don't realise that side of it. They're just looking at a consumer base and the storyline, which was a gripping storyline. But I think they do need to be held accountable.
No, I completely agree. So moving on then, that's happened. We sold that, and then you are again, what next?
Okay.
So what were your decisions, and how long did it take? Because I often think it's like my mum used to say, if I was really upset or I'd got beaten up or whatever it was, right, get up, pick yourself up, dust yourself down. But there is sometimes a lull. We do need to wallow for a day or a week or an hour, whatever it is. Entrepreneurs don't. They do bounce back quite quickly. But tell us, that's gone. Did you take a breath?
I did. So basically we sold, the sale went through in December 21. And I was pregnant, and so I had my little girl in March 22. So from December to March was probably the hardest period of my life, because I had no purpose. I had no business. I was pregnant. I loved the gym and things. I was still doing basic workouts, but I was quite heavily pregnant at the time. So my workouts had reduced. I had no other purpose. And I used to do the school run, come home, I'd potter around, I'd wash the pots, I'd do the washing. And I was like, I can't cope like this. This is not me. So it was just a matter of like trying to reassess and repurpose and see where I wanted to go. I'd come to the conclusion that I'm completely unemployable. And I said, I cannot.
I think most entrepreneurs are,
I cannot be employed again. And I had a few conversations and a few opportunities arose, but they were working for people. And it just wasn't right for me. So I spoke to a friend and she said, why don't you come over to Gonna Cook? And I said, no, I can't go back to law. I'm not in that headspace anymore. And she said, look, Gonna Cook is completely different. It's basically you set your own business up and you contract with the company, you partner with them, and you basically get paid what you bill. Now, that is unheard of in law, because most lawyers, if they look at what they bill for that firm, to earn 70% of that is just on another level. It also gave me the luxury of planning my own diary, working around the children. I'll quite often work evenings. So I had the conversations, got the ball rolling, and decided to go back to law, but on my terms. And for me, it's a win-win. It's brilliant. It's great to work my mind again. I'm loving the challenge. When I went into the wedding industry, loved it, but I wasn't challenged in that respect. So now I'm back to, I've got a list every day and I've got things to do and I'm challenged mentally and I'm really enjoying it. So yeah, I'm back to law. And
Lion Eyes, tell us about Lion Eyes.
Oh, so Lion Eyes. So during the lockdown periods, it was obviously, again, I'm not very good at not doing anything. So the weddings had calmed down. We wasn't allowed to do weddings. We were all at home, and I'm very passionate about health and fitness. So I'd quite often post on my Instagram, I'd been to the gym, I'd done a workout, and people were messaging me saying, oh, Sam, I really want to get in shape. Can you help me? Can you give me a bit of guidance? So I'd be messaging people saying, and I was almost fitness coaching throughout lockdown. And then I thought, right, okay, I'm going to look into this. And I spoke to a few suppliers, managed to source a supplier in China and source my own fitness products. I then started hosting live workouts on Instagram, had hundreds of people joining us live. And it was, do you know what? Although it was a really challenging period of my life boutique-wise, I can look back really fondly and that probably actually helped me sleep at night and helped me get through those times actually. And I just loved it. Absolutely loved it.
Well, they do say we're either pushed by our fears or pulled by our dreams.
Yeah.
And someone without a dream or a focus or a destination is lost. It's like you're just drifting.
Yes.
And yeah, you've got your kids, and that's a really important part of your life.
Yeah.
But you, as an entrepreneur, you also need this destination. I think this
Massive.
Goal, this peak that you've got to climb, and without that we do become a bit lost, I think. And people can get into the psychology of whether that's right or wrong. And when I became behavioral profiler, there's 4 core behaviors. There's subsets, and we're all very individual. But what you realize is that you cannot make someone your behavior. They are theirs, and they're good, you're good. I was taught once that some people go through life thinking you're great, I'm not as good as you, or I'm better than you, or we're both like rubbish. The ideal thing is to say we're both great, but you're different and I'm different, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But no, I think it's really important to recognize that you shouldn't have to choose this or this or this. You should be able to be a multifaceted person and say, I can be a great mum, a great partner, I can have my individual focus and time, but I can also be a strong business person and have these goals and not feel guilty, because people sometimes feel guilty about having their business or not spending enough time in certain areas. How do you balance that time and purpose and focus as a businesswoman? I hope you're enjoying Success is a System. Every Tuesday we launch it on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. Drop us a note and tell us who you would like to see or hear on Success is a System, or what subjects you'd like us to cover to help you and your business. Success is a System. Like, subscribe, and make sure you get it every Tuesday for great lessons and systems that have made people wealthy, healthy and successful.
You know what? That's probably why I actually started the podcast. Primarily the mum guilt that I feel on a day-to-day basis, as well as... Is that
a phrase, mum guilt?
Mum guilt is a phrase. It's a real thing. And every single mum that I've interviewed for the podcast resonates with that and feels that.
Yeah.
It's the impossible. It's the impossible challenge. You're trying to do everything you can do to be the perfect mum, whilst doing everything you can do to progress a business and to grow and to, I'm so driven and I'm on this journey that I will not stop until I succeed. But alongside that, I've got my 4 children, and not only that, they do every after school club going, football, gymnastics, swimming, and
all different.
All different. Every weekend, myself and my husband, we have to split. I'm at one football match, he's at another. And it's constant.
Yeah.
And when you interviewed Greg Wallace on your podcast and he said about planning, that for me is a system to success, because without planning, it's impossible. I really need to make sure that I am planned and I know exactly where we are, what we're doing, and what time I've got to fit everything in that I need to fit in.
It's interesting because Greg talks about being OCD, and a lot of entrepreneurs have an element of that, and actually it's often seen as something that needs addressing or needs treatment, in effect. I'd say we all need a healthy dose of OCD, because what it does give you is the ability to break down focus, goal set, and plan so that you can balance lots of those different things and prioritize.
Definitely. And I think, like you say, it's balance. It's finding that balance. And there's periods of my life where the balance is one way, or the balance has been the other way. And it's just trying to continuously deal with that balance the best way you can. And, I always say, no one's perfect, and we've just got to do the best we can. No,
exactly. And if you go to sleep at night knowing you've done the best you can, then you can sleep well and you wake up and do more or different or better tomorrow, even if it's been a bad day. I think it's really important. So the secret life of women in business. So how many sessions you done? Where are we with it? Who have you spoken to? Who's your kind of dream people to get on in the coming months?
Do you know what? This is a huge passion to me. I am a massive advocate of women in business, women generally. I'm, if you want to call it a feminist, I really do believe that women achieve so much to balance what they balance. Even I say to people, planning, the children get an invitation to a party. You've got to buy the present. You've got to make sure they're there at the right time. The school dinner money. I mean, my school's newsletter, that is a full-time job. Like reading that is like, I don't know how many pages, and then to schedule everything. So, I've got a massive admiration to women, mums, everyone. So yeah, I don't know what made me think about the podcast. And I just thought, do you know what? I know a lot of people, and I know a lot of girls that, would like to share their story, and I'm motivated and inspired by that. So let's get it out there. So yeah, I started interviewing. I'm on to episode 6 as we speak. Local business owners. I do have some exciting people lined up. I've got a Britain's Got Talent semi-finalist coming on, which is really exciting. I've got one of the Apprentice stars coming on. I want to show to people that you can do it all. You can be a mum, you can be a business owner, you can have those goals as well as being, a good with your family life and your home life, and it's okay to do that.
I mean, look, I am very proud to be successful because of my mum in many ways. I mean, the day I lost her, a week after I lost her, I just woke up in the middle of the night and I was really upset, and I even now I sort of feel that. But I remember writing a poem which I'll have to dig out again, but it was called Because of You, and it talked about all the things that she sort of gave me as a woman, as a strong working woman. We'd go to bed and she'd be whirring away on the sewing machine. She used to do piecework. But I think it's really important to have the podcast, because one of the things I do find as a podcaster myself, we're fellow podcasters, I'm really conscious of diversity. So trying to get different people on. But you'd be amazed how many successful women don't necessarily want to come on a man's podcast. And maybe that's, sometimes it may be that I just don't want to put myself out there. I do find it as a behavioural profiler, some of them don't want to be seen to boast. And that's really sad, because I'm thinking, and I've got it with a very successful Sikh businessman who's a similar thing. He said, our culture, we don't boast. And I said, but it's not about you boasting. It's about some young girl out there or some young Sikh out there who's thinking, I'm restricted because I'm a girl or because I'm a Sikh or because I'm this in a prejudiced country, whether it's sexual or racist or whatever. And it's really important for people's strengths to be shared, for that motivation to be shared. Now, I am really excited now. I mean, you've come on, which is great, because I haven't had many women on there. It seems that suddenly you get a turn. I've got Dame Mary Archer coming on. She is like a Duracell bunny, It's like, just still got passion and energy. I said to her at a shoot I was at, I didn't shoot, but I was there because I'm an ambassador for Cambridge Children's Hospital, and she's very involved in raising money for the Cambridge Children's Hospital. And I said, you must be really proud, because there's a road in Cambridge now called Dame Mary Archer Lane.
Oh, wow.
I said to have a road named after you. And I don't know how old she is, but she's a mature lady, and it's wrong to ask the age anyway. But she's been around a long time, been a busy wife as well with children and Jeffrey Archer and so on. And I said, it must be great to have a road named after you. And she said, yes, I want an airport next. And I thought, they're just fantastic. Still got that ambition, that drive to go forward. But it's important that we each, in our different ways, attract different people onto podcasts. And so that people who are viewers or aspiring entrepreneurs or young individuals can see someone and think, oh yeah, she's similar to me, and if she can do it with 4 kids and having had a business that didn't quite work out, then maybe I can. And I think, good on you. If you're getting people that I can't get and vice versa, at least we're getting them out there and sharing their stories.
Do you know what? You've actually covered exactly what kind of like that trend is. Every girl I've spoken to at the moment has said to me, they don't want to, they play down their achievements. There's always I know, but it's, it's only small, like, and one of my friends who came on, she's a lawyer, and the money she is earning, she's a mum of 2, a single mum of 2. And I said to her, what you've achieved is huge. She went through a really difficult marriage breakdown. And I walked into her home and I said, do you realise what you've achieved? And then you've come out of really a struggle, a period of time which is really difficult. And you've overcome that. And to see you doing that is so inspiring for other people. So, and she didn't realise what an inspiration she was. And following the podcast, I honestly, every week, it's my lift me up. I release it and I get so many messages saying, I really related to that. I've just really enjoyed listening to that. How inspiring was that? And that to me, again, energies, you're lifted with energies, and I get an absolute buzz of the energy. It just gives me that high that I need to keep going as well.
And I think it's more necessary than ever, because if we pick up on what we were saying about the press, the sort of pariahs, the negative that they're spreading, if you like, and this is like the antidote to that negative. If we can get positive stories of overcoming, stories of the business not working out, but you literally, it was a blip and then you're back on it. You're back on it with the next idea, the new idea, how we can take what's happened, learn from it, grow from it, and go into something that's new and different and interesting, and give people the belief that it's okay to fail. It's okay to feel stressed. It's okay to have problems, but it's not okay to just stop.
Absolutely. And when you said about you maybe struggle to get women on your podcast, I can understand that, because I did a LinkedIn post actually, and it spoke about my relationship with suit jackets. Now, that is a trigger for me. And when you look at triggers, it's created by trauma. Now, trauma doesn't have to be anything major. It can be a small thing. And trauma for me, when I look back, was when I was a newly qualified trainee solicitor. I was around men in blazers, in suits, formal, intimidating. And I look back at that time and, it's a very...
I'm glad I didn't wear a jacket today.
I know. I'd have been like, oh no. But it was I'm really intimidated by that. And when I walk into a room of these suit jackets and these men, it's hard for me to find my place, actually. And I think a lot of women feel very, very similar. And I think my trauma relates back to my early days as a trainee solicitor and a newly qualified solicitor. And I almost wish I had that confidence I have now to go back to those times. Because it's about knowing your worth. And no matter what level of qualification you are, what stage in your journey you are, we are all humans. We all deserve respect. And people only deserve my respect if they earn my respect. And I look back and I think, gosh, do you know what? There'd be conversations I would have now that I wouldn't have dreamt of having back then. I think it can be intimidating for women to enter a men's world almost.
Yeah, and the more we can talk people to people rather than business to business or male to female or female to male, if it can just be people to people, and we can really start to break down that and celebrate those successes, but give young people the strength. Because, I was conscious, I was saying to someone a couple of weeks ago, if I got drunk and maybe was sick at 17, 18, 19, whatever, a handful of people would know about it. I could deny it. I could say they're exaggerating, but only a handful of people would know about it. With social media and everything, everyone's worried these days that someone catches it on a phone and suddenly 4 million people see it. And so young people live in this world of almost better to stay safe than ever take a risk or put themselves forward. And actually, therefore, I think the more they hear, these people have put themselves forward, they did fail, they did do stupid things, Jules and I, some of the things we went through, I look back and I still kind of, the heckles go up on the back of my neck and stuff. But I genuinely don't believe we'd be where we are without all of that. Yeah. And it's interesting, you say if you could go back and you got more strength and confidence and everything now, where's that come from? Because what's changed from the young businesswoman who was still a lawyer back then to you now? What's given you that extra strength?
You know what? When I've listened to your podcast, Mike, and you speak about the journey and enjoying the journey, I genuinely believe that the strength has come from the journey. There's been so many examples I can tell you. Actually, one example of when I had Tepee, I actually knew that we'd kind of made it and made a mark in Tepee because we got a legal letter saying we were going to get sued for copyright and trademark. Now, this was from the big boy, and this was the main player in the industry. And we got it, and I thought, wow, they've kind of they think they've, that we're a threat. So I picked up the phone and I actually rang and asked to speak to him direct. And I had the conversation with him and I said, you know what, the industry is a small industry. Let's speak about this. Do you genuinely feel that we've breached copyright, trademark? Let's have the conversation. And he didn't want the conversation. He wanted the threat of the legal letter, and he felt actually, I think, quite out of place me picking up the phone and speaking to him. So he was actually
more threatened by you than the other way around?
Well, I felt so from the conversation, but then there's a board that governs the safekeeping of outdoor structures, and I became a director of that board, and I was the only female director. And once I became a director, I actually got another one of the directors called me to say, I'm really sorry, but we're going to politely ask for you to step down. And I said, oh, for what reason? And they said, because there's an ongoing legal dispute with another director. I So I said, well, there isn't a dispute. There's been an accusation made, and there's no depth to that accusation. And, you know, we've defended we didn't even go legal with it. I just nipped it in the bud. There was no accusation to be made. But that pressure to tell me to step down. And I said, no, I'm not stepping down. And then I had to go to a board meeting with that director and with the rest of the male directors, because I was the only female. And to walk in that room, honestly, that took some courage, and that was, you know, another sleepless night.
If you hadn't walked in the room, you wouldn't have got through it, and if you hadn't got through it, you wouldn't now have the strength to know you can enter that room, you can get through it, you can come out stronger because of it.
So those challenges have got me to where I am now, where I feel a lot more confident. I will openly have those difficult conversations now. I'm not scared of my thing. I'd rather approach it and face it.
Well, it's interesting because Mark Wright, The Apprentice, the podcast I did with him, he talks about when a similar thing happened, and he told Lord Sugar, they've said they're going to sue us over a competitor again, a bigger competitor, and Lord Sugar says, great. He said, write this down. He said, I want you to ring him. I want you to ring him now, and I want you to say, this is Mark Wright. He said, yeah, but they've said they're going to sue us. Say hello, and then say fuck off. He says I can't say that. He says you bloody tell him that now because he's coming in like the big bully, trying to scare you, trying to push you down, trying to make you shake in your boots and stay little.
Yeah. And
you need to show him that you're absolutely willing to get into that fight, that you're absolutely as strong, if not stronger than him, and. You shouldn't have to go into conflict, but one of my sayings is conflict leads to clarity. Yes. Now, you don't have to be aggressive in conflict, but if you do everything to avoid conflict, then actually you can never win a fight or a battle or overcome something. So conflict, where if you say something and I say, absolutely not, I disagree with you, I'm going to fight you all the way, that you might say, well, I disagree. We can have a conversation. From that conversation, you might understand that you maybe misunderstood me, or vice versa. I understand I misunderstood you, and we may still part with the intention to sue each other or to go different ways. But without that conflict, we don't have the conversation, and without the conversation, we don't get to understanding, and without the understanding, it's just like magnets pushing each other apart. But there's no new outcome, if you like. So conflict is. I used to say to my daughters a lot, don't avoid conflict, avoid conflict. It's really important to have that conflict.
I think it is, and it does give you that thick skin, and I can understand now from business perspectives why people do have that thick skin, because even with the best will in the world to avoid it, it does tend to happen. Like I say, COVID, who would have expected that? And you know, that a lot of conflict was caused from that, like a lot of the legal letters and the stressful side of it. And we did everything in our power to avoid that, but it still came. But my mum's always said to me, you've got a shell, you put your shell over you and you don't let anyone in. You don't let anyone past that. And I've always maintained that I can put on this front, I've got this shell up, and, you know, I'll maybe walk away from that meeting with that board of directors. I walked in that car and it was almost like after the meeting I felt emotionally drained because of the worry and what it took for me to put over that block and that shell to walk into that meeting. But I feel like a lot of, like my brother said to me today, are you nervous? And I said, I am nervous, but I'm excited. And like now I feel like those experiences have led me to take opportunities and just to say yes to things because I've got that confidence from.
Well, interestingly, I hadn't seen this lady for 40 odd years, but last week I had breakfast with one of my teachers who was art and drama and so on, and I got an art award in school, and I didn't do particularly well in school, didn't have any A's, you know, not like yourself or my daughters who got all A stars, you know, it's like incredible, but I was B's and C's and grade 1s, GCSEs or CSE, whatever they were. Anyway, did all right but not good, but I liked the arts, and I sort of relaxed and lost myself in a little bit of that. But one of the interesting things is when people ask me today, what good is school? What subject did you get most out of? Obviously, you need the maths, you need the English to a certain degree. But I still today say drama was the most important subject. Yeah. And the reason I say it, you talk about putting on that shell or like this protective armour, as people often talk about. And sometimes people say, oh, I put a shell around me, as if it's a negative that stops people getting close to me. And sometimes it can be. But actually, I look at it from another way, and I say drama was the most important because I learned a few things. I learned voice projection, which is really important for when I did conferences and things. I also learned to breathe when I'm stressed, because if you're going to do a show, an act or something, you got to get some of that. So being able to breathe and not let your lungs close down. But more importantly, in improvising and playing roles, I learned that if I wasn't feeling confident, I could act confident.
Yes.
You know, if I was scared, I could act as if I was fearless.
Yeah.
And actually, I think there is something about the more you do something, the more you become that.
Yes.
And actually, there's nothing wrong with putting on a shell if it protects you, you know, psychologically, or acting like something until you feel strong enough to be that without an act.
100%.
And yet we tell people, don't put up a barrier, don't put up a shell. Well, sometimes you need, if you're going to be shot down, you need some protective armour.
Yeah,
kind
you
of thing.
do.
And even if you're only worried about it, you need some. So I would strongly recommend people not to be afraid to put up a barrier. And that barrier, it can come down, but it needs to come down when you feel that you're in a position where you can safely bring that barrier down, or there's enough trust there.
Yes.
Because there are people out there that will shoot you down if they see any weakness, that will find that gap and you know, break it open and destroy you. Whether it's the bully big Tepee company or whoever it was that's doing that.
It's so true. And like my mum actually, I speak about her a lot, but they are Eugenes, but I was such a close family.
What's her name, by the way?
Carol, Kazzy. Yeah. So she always used to say to me, never let anyone see your weakness.
Yeah.
Don't let anyone know your weakness, because that is an easy way to attack. And, you know, and speaking about the school system, yes, I was very academic, but my brother was the complete opposite. My little boy, he doesn't suit the school system. Yeah. And I said, excuse me, the school system is so outdated. You know, we're teaching people to work on your own. Well, we all know that to be successful, you need collaboration, you need a network, you don't want to be working on your own. You know, there's a right and a wrong answer. There is no right and wrong answer. You know, there is a journey, and you take it and you learn from that mistake. Yeah. You're not allowed to make mistakes at school. So I say to my little boy, I always use the example, I say, right, I got straight A's. I did really, really well. Your uncle came out of school with nothing, and look what he's achieved. Please, it's another trigger for me, the school system. I just think there needs some updating of the school system.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a Doctor of Education awarded by Anglia Ruskin, which was the only way I was ever going to get a degree. And I'm very proud of it. Education is really important. And but not necessarily the school system. And it's interesting that there's a commonality of view there, probably. But I still look at it, it does give you a base, good, bad or ugly. And what I think about is the school system, in my view, is like the foundation. Now, you can build a foundation, and on that, you then choose what you build above it. But you still need a foundation.
Yeah.
Some people have a better foundation, others don't. But the biggest mistake you could make is have that foundation and never learn beyond that. So to me, education is a lifelong thing, not necessarily something we do at school. Some of us are ready in school for it, some of us aren't. Some of us feel like we failed school when really school failed us. I mean, if you're anywhere on the spectrum, dyslexic, dyspraxic, ADHD, ADD, the school system will probably fail you because it isn't built to handle that. Or as they try to handle that, they slow everyone else down who might be excelling. So, and part of that does need massive overhaul because if we go back 200 years, your way of transport would have been your feet or maybe a horse. You know, now we've got electric cars, we've got aeroplanes, we've got boats, we've got all sorts of things. If you go back 200 years, your way of communication would have been speech, but more and more people now can read, can write.
Yeah.
We've got computers, we've got emails, we've got text, we've got mobile phone. But education, 200 years ago, you sat behind a desk and listened to someone probably bore you to tears. Today, you sit behind a desk and probably listen to someone bore you to tears. So education hasn't evolved or transformed in the way that most other parts of our lives have.
Yeah.
And Elon Musk has gone as far as saying that he thinks within 10 years it won't exist in the way it does today because there's nothing I can't learn on the internet. On the internet, I can find a person who's relating it in a way that I relate to.
Yeah.
On the internet, I can play something faster or slower.
Yeah.
I can replay it. You know, whereas at university now, a lot of universities, you don't even get to ask the lecturers any questions. They come, they speak, you speak to a tutor if you got any questions.
Right.
And it's like, it's gone backwards, it's not gone forward. So, no. Yeah. But I interview a lot of people who have failed at school, Joseph Valente, Neville Wright. You're from up Leeds, Yorkshire way. I was up there with David Potts, who got 5 Fs at O level,
Right.
and is now earning £4 or £5 million a year as CEO of Morrison's, as a self-built man from shelf stacker all the way through, 110,000 employees, hundreds of stores, and a great leader and passionate leader who doesn't judge anyone based on qualification because of where he came from.
Yeah.
So no, I think we should all go into schools, certainly as a successful woman or successful man or successful business, to try and give those kids that belief that it's not where you start that matters. It's where you finish and the journey along the way that's everything. Thanks for joining us again on Success is a System. Thank you, Sam. We really appreciate that. Look forward to your journey and being kept up to date on it. Sam's information will be put in the show notes, so do look out for that. Do check out that podcast. If you've enjoyed today, like, subscribe and share, and we look forward to seeing you again on Success is a System.